Greetings, comrades. When an entity switches from single entry recording, where they simply record transactions in these special journals, they total those up, prepare schedules, tables, and then prep the reports. When we move to a double entry recording system, we add a couple of steps to that process. Because in a double entry recording system, we need a general ledger. And before we enter items for an existing business into the general ledger, we need to process them via a general journal entry. So therefore, I've pulled this question from the 2023 VCAA exam. We've been asked to prepare a GJ entry to establish double entry. So what I've done is I've created a spreadsheet where I've simply copied all of these items, and we're going to go through whether to put them on the debit or the credit side. Now, just a reminder, if we look at our balance sheet here, the debit side, we report all our assets. On the credit side, we report our liabilities and our OE. When we establish double entry, we don't need to do this for revenue and expense accounts. They're closed off at the end of each reporting period. We don't need to do this for drawings or net profit. That's closed off to capital. That's in another aspect of the course. So let's work our way through this list, and I'll explain why it's going on the debit or the credit side of our GJ. So accounts payable, that's a liability. Funds, that's going to represent a future sacrifice of an economic benefit when we pay our suppliers. So liability goes on the credit side. So if we go into our GJ here, I'm just going to enter that figure, 26.5K. Accounts receivable is an asset. We're going to get a benefit from that in the future when we receive those funds from our credit customers. So there's a debit entry. Now, even though accumulated depreciation will be reported on the debit side of the balance sheet, it's a negative figure. It reduces our carrying value. So in the general ledger, it's going to have a credit balance. So therefore, we need to put it on the credit side of the GJ. 9650. Same drill with allowance for doubtful debts. That's going to reduce the amount owing from our accounts receivable, so it'll be a negative asset. That's going to go on the credit side as well, 500. Now with the bank, that can be in surplus or deficit. So when it's in deficit, it's an overdraft, and we're actually told here it's a credit. It has a credit balance, so therefore that's a liability. We owe money to the bank. We've overdrawn our account, so we comply with the instructions on the question, and we're going to report that on the credit side. Computer system, that's a asset, so therefore it's going to provide a future economic benefit, so therefore we're going to bang that on the debit side of the GJ. Now GST clearing, they've told it it's a credit balance. We owe funds to the ATO, so it's a liability. Put that on the credit side. Inventory is an asset, so we simply list that, record that on the debit side. Now, when you're doing this, be careful with the titles, just to avoid the trap, and just use the same terminology as we have in the question booklet. So therefore you can't go wrong, as opposed to abbreviations which VCAA might be picky on. All right, the loan from Lobster Bank, it's a liability. That's going to result in the future sacrifice of funds when we pay them in the future. So we're going to put that on the credit side, 13K. And finally, our prepaid advertising, that's an asset. We'll get the benefit from that in the next reporting period. Okay, so let's just enter that. Now, this is why I've done this in Excel, because I keep a running total here of our debits and our credits, but generally you'd be doing this manually in an answer booklet, but for the purpose of, I guess, providing the pedagogy for this lesson, I have gone with the spreadsheet approach. Now, our debits don't equal our credits. And we've got to work with the accounting equation here, A equals L plus OE. We've got our assets, including our negative ones. We've got our liabilities. So now we need to work out our capital. Capital is the missing figure. So what I can do here is we can either just simply add up all our debits, which equals 106.7k, and we can subtract our credits and we'll end up with our capital balance. So I'll just use Excel to work that out for me. And that's our capital balance, 50,800. So now that we have processed all of our opening balances for our assets, liabilities, and our owner's equity, we're ready to post to the general ledger.